In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. المسيح قام من بين الأموات ووطئ الموت بالموت ووهب الحياة للذين في القبور. Jesus, having risen from the grave as he foretold, hath granted us eternal life and great mercy. Amen.
Amen.
As we, welcome everyone. After a couple weeks, actually 2 weeks, of not doing it, getting together. They were very busy 2 weeks, especially with Holy Week and then Bright Week. But God willing, we resume now our meetings. I know summer is approaching, and nice weather is basically more of the nice weather that we have now, so people are more interested to go out and stuff. But I always appreciate people still finding the time for church, and it's something always beautiful. Like church always has a place in our heart and on our schedule. Tonight, Salim, yes.
Can we say a little prayer for our families
in
Palestine?
Absolutely. We can add this. We'll add it now, and then Lord Jesus Christ, our God, we ask you to look after our brothers and sisters and families and friends who are under attack. Please keep them safe and keep them healthy and take away all harms from them. We beseech you through the intercessions of thy mother, the Theotokos, and all of the saints. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Abuna.
God willing.
Thank you, Abuna.
On Sunday, we will definitely commemorate everybody during the Great Entrance. At least that's a great cause to pray for. Anyway, well, they will be on my proscomedy anyway. But we will mention them too. God bless them. Anyway, tonight actually, hopefully, it will be a light one. I do wanna continue with church art. Last time when we got together, we did the saints, looking the canons, and then we had the church art. But because we spoke at length with the other ones, we didn't get the chance to cover church art, so we left it. But I don't want to start something new with church art, because next week is basically we start the creed. We look into the creed. I believe in one God, and then we kind of go through every section of it. So I didn't want to do church art and that at the same time. At least with the church art, in general, we can talk. I'll tell you in general about church art, which means it includes iconography, church music, and architecture. I have a couple pictures to look at, but also I just wanted as a basic information that I would share with you, and then if you have any questions about any of those three, the iconography, the church music, and the architecture of the church. Okay, so just let me share. Walid, if you don't mind, can you let me maybe just it's a couple of pictures, but thank you. So this is basically the main slide that I had from last week. The rudder was part of the canons, but at least we're looking at iconography, and you'll see this icon here. We're looking at the music in general. We talk about it, and then the architecture of the church. And there are a couple other pictures I want to share. Just as an introduction, the Orthodox Church has a rich tradition of iconography. We all know this. There's no church that you walk into, an Orthodox church. It's actually weird to walk into an Orthodox church that you don't see icons. It's the more icons you see in the Orthodox church, the more you feel like I am in a church. And on a personal level, it's always been a struggle for me when I go to other churches and you don't see like icons, even if those churches actually acknowledge, or accept iconography, and they don't see it as a sign of idolatry or anything like this. But it is Orthodox. For us, iconography, it is such an important and like the highest artistic achievement, if I can say, like when it comes to iconography. The Orthodox Church has a rich tradition of iconography as well as other church arts, music, architecture, sculpture, needlework, poetry, etc. This artistic tradition is based on the Orthodox Christian doctrine of human creativity rooted in God's love for man and the world in creation. The icon is Orthodoxy's highest artistic achievement. Again, it's when it comes to iconography, it basically take precedent over everything in the church, in the music, the architecture. We all have, icons. We might not be able to have, build an architectural, church in our own home. We might not be able to sing, but we all can have an icon that we put at home. There's always like we can have that all the time with us, the icon in our pocket, in our wallet. And on top of this, when it comes to the icons, it's actually gospel proclamation. Through the icons and with the icon, we learn a lot about our faith. And most of you were on the Zoom workshop that the ladies hosted with Huri Aaron Kimmett, where she spoke at length about iconography. It is recorded. I'm pretty sure, I don't know honestly if we shared it or no. I don't know, maybe Nancy or Nicolette can answer that. Or are we waiting on anything? Or
No, we shared it, Father. It's on the St. George YouTube channel.
Thank you, Angela. Bravo. So people can look, take a look at this one. You can then at length know why we have what we have. Like there are two styles in the Orthodox Church, basically, when it comes to like drastic changes between those two styles in iconography. We have the Byzantine style and we have the Russian style. And in those styles, we have like different styles here and there. But they all have kind of like the same concept. You don't see Jesus with his, 8 packs, like muscles, or you don't see like some kind of a blue eyes Jesus, or like Mary's hair, like somehow, or a heart, like like a focus on a Christ heart or something. They all have, at least in the Orthodox Church, we kind of agree on the principles, on the basic rules when it comes to iconography. Like I said, we have those kind of two styles, a little bit different between Byzantine and Russian styles. We'll talk when it comes to architecture. I'm going to show one picture from our church, and then we can talk about the iconography and the architectural, basically, shape of the church, and why we have what we have, and how traditional, not traditional this is. But when it comes again to the icons, it is Orthodoxy's highest artistic achievement. It's a gospel proclamation, a doctrinal teaching, and a spiritual inspiration in colors and lines. Again, all the colors that we see in the icons, what Jesus is wearing, what the Theotokos, Mary is wearing, they all signify something. Like we always, whenever we see blue, it's like divinity. When we see red, it's more of like martyrdom. That's why a lot of the saints, we usually see them, like, especially if they were martyred saints, we see them with like a red cloth on, or like wearing red. If it's green, it's more of like earth. All of these like different colors that we might we see them, they all signify something, and they all, and when we read, when we look at icons, we actually get to learn about this feast just by seeing it. And that was the tool actually in iconography because it's something very old. It's not something just popped up like the last 1,000 years or so. We have icons from the 2nd century, 3rd century, because it was very important to have icons. Why? And especially depicted in a certain way, is to teach people who most of them don't know how to read or write. So even when the Gospels came out, or like the book of Gospels or the New Testament came out, if I can say as a one book, most of the people could not, read, those. So the church relied on depicting those stories in the Gospels in iconography, so people can learn from it. So I'll give you an example. When we look at the Nativity of Christ, it's actually the Christmas icon, Nativity of Christ. We see Christ technically, well, we know from the story he's sleeping or he's laying in a manger, right? But when you look at the icon of Nativity of Christ, you actually see it's not a manger. In 99.9999% of icons, Orthodox icons, you'll look at it and you'll look as if it's a tomb. It's like the way it's depicted. Look at it and then Google it or pay attention, and you'll see it's like a tomb. So it's like prefiguring in a way that Christ was born in the end. He's like, in order to die for him, then later to resurrect from the dead. So that's why also a lot of times you might hear the term, we hear the term that somebody is writing an icon instead of saying somebody is drawing an icon. So and so draws icons. Usually you'll hear people saying so and so writes icons. And why we use the verb write is because we mean by it like it's a story, or it's like telling you, we're looking at at the icon, it's actually you're learning something as a flex. It's like speaking to you by the depiction that we have. There's a very common description for icons too. If like you Google what is Orthodox icons do or mean, always like one of the first answers you'll see, well, it's a window. The Byzantine or Orthodox icons, or the icons in the Orthodox Church, are a window, in a way, window from it to see what's behind what's just written and depicting, so you learn a story. This icon that we're looking at here on the screen, it is called, actually it's cut off, but like on top of, on the top, it will say All Saints icons. In a few weeks, we're going to celebrate All Saints. I know it's different than what we are, accustomed, especially in our country here. Like having October 31st, I think, or Halloween, like around Halloween Day. But in the Orthodox Church, it's always the Sunday after Pentecost, All Saints Sunday. But in it, we'll see basically how the depiction of all the saints here, the main saints, hierarchs, righteous people, female saints, ascetics, kings, emperors, and then those two in the bottom, they're Adam and Eve. It's a depiction from Revelation. There's a story in Revelation about Adam and Eve standing. It seems like that's the temple of, that's the altar, like at the throne of God, kind of like praying or doing something. So it's a window. Like I said, it's a very common, or one of the most common actually, description about what the icon is. It's a window to let you see what behind just what's drawn there or what's written. Any questions about icons? You can unmute yourself, or they can Nicola, if you don't mind, if you see somebody, because I only see now just 3 people because I'm sharing the screen. If no, we shall continue. That was when icons. Again, I would urge you, if you want to learn more about the icons, we had a professional iconographer who spoke to us at length about iconography. Khoury Aaron Kemet did a great job explaining a lot of the details. So if you're interested, you can find it on our Facebook page and you can listen to it. I think it's like an hour long or so presentation. Next thing is music. Musical expression may be added to the icon as a source of discovering the Orthodox Christian worldview. Here, however, there is a greater difficulty because of the loss in recent years of the liturgical and spiritual meaning of music in the church, and we'll discuss that a little bit. Just as the theological meaning of the traditional Orthodox icon is being rediscovered, so is the traditional doctrinal significance of Orthodox music. The process in the latter case, however, is much slower, much more difficult, and much less evident to the average person. And why does the book, what I'm reading is basically from the book, from, the series of Father Hapkos about this. Music, it's also a great component. There's no Orthodox worship without some music involved in it. There's no services. Almost everything is chanted between, and again, we have two big styles or two important traditions, is the Byzantine style and the Russian style. Usually Ethiopian churches use the Byzantine style, but here in the States, we are a little bit more influenced by also Russian tradition, and that's why we hear the four-part harmony in the Russian style music. But both are, big component. The reason Father Hopko will say in the book that it's also, we're trying to discover these days the the authentic, if I can say, music, or go back to the authentic music styles or the iconography. It's because we got to a point now that it's we kind of deviated in a way about what we the way we sing or that we do the iconography, that we were very affected by some by like secular influence. But in general, that's why now we see more of like going back to more traditional, and I'll talk a little bit about this. Like in the Byzantine chant, what the music that you hear mostly, especially now at our church, is basically like what's called the Byzantine style. And it's actually the word Byzantine music, it is a wrong term. Byzantine music, it was never referred to the music in the church used like the one you hear when I chant or on our chanters, God bless them, chant. We refer to it now as Byzantine music, but it's never been called that. And this is a name, Byzantine music. It's only been started basically in the 18th century, 19th century. Before, the music used in the church, it has always been referred to as what's called the ecclesiastical music. Ecclesiastical is literally the church music. It has a specific name that literally says the church music. It was never referred to as Russian, nor referred to as Byzantine. But the West, mainly the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches, started referring to anything that came out from the East as Byzantine. And it actually was a degrading a name. Because Constantinople was built, or the city of Istanbul, Constantinople, it was built on a town that was very known for their idol worship, and it was called Byzantium. Byzantium was a very major city in Asia Minor in Turkey that was known for its idolatry and idol worshippers. So when Constantine the Great in the 4th century built Constantinople, he built it upon, this city. But in the 18th century, when more people started writing about, especially the West, writing about Orthodoxy and Christianity in the East, they wanted to degrade this religion or this faith. So they started calling us those Byzantines. Those Byzantine architecture, Byzantine iconography, Byzantine music, to remind people like, oh, Byzantine is from Byzantium, which means it's not actually a good or an authentic Christian. It's actually more of like idol worshippers. But we, as Orthodox, we took that turn. We kind of like, okay, yeah, we'll take it and we'll name our music anyway. But in general, before, even in Russia, they had a different style of music as we hear it in our churches here. But it's always never been called, well, that's the Russian church. It is called the ecclesiastical church. It's the church of the, the music of the church. But of course, music comes out like, when it comes to music, it is always, it is affected by the culture. So when we hear Byzantine chant, we know at the end that it sounds very similar to a lot of secular Arabic music or secular Middle Eastern music. And I can go further. The Byzantine chant, as we know it now, it is also big, a lot affected by Judaism. Like the way we intone the epistles or the gospels, it is basically taken from, even to now, those ultra-Orthodox Jews, the way they intone their scriptures, it's basically we took that from them and we kind of like made a little bit changes in it. But at the end of the day, the music, whichever Western or Byzantine, it was taken from the culture around it. So of course, in Russia, when it came to Peter the Great, if I'm not mistaken, 15th century or 16th century, I think, Peter the Great, an emperor who came to Russia at that time, and he wanted to westernize everything in Russia. He did not like anything that was old, basically. So they had a type of music that was called Znamny chant, just FYI, and he got rid of it. It was like a more kind of like very close to the Byzantine, but he made sure that it's now the music starting in the 16th century, 17th century to start like sounding like more like the West. He just wanted everything to be westernized. And that in a way developed. So the Russians developed their own style based on that, based on the Gregorian chant, based on four-part harmony, Russian Western music, and it became such. It's a major part of a Christian, Russian Christian Orthodoxy, and of course, I won't say it spills, but like people, especially in Europe, Orthodox in Europe and in the States, they kind of took that tradition and they adopted it and they use it. But as Antiochians here, we see that we're kind of like, especially in our archdiocese, we kind of like, we like both and we use both. And we, some hymns that we like to hear in Western, some hymns that we like to use in Byzantine. But both of them, basically, in the end, there's no one is better than the other, if I can't say. I know some of us are familiar or they're very comfortable listening to one than the other. Of course, I mean, that's totally normal and nothing wrong with that. But they're both at the end acceptable to the extent you don't abuse it. In which way you don't abuse it? Like, let's say, whenever, like if you're doing four-part harmony, you don't expect to do like very complicated parts, or you make the music so complicated that you lose the words, or you don't bring like a full band, like somebody to play the guitar with you, or the organ, or all of this. Or even when it comes to Byzantine, it's not just like this one person show where he or she doing whatever she wants and like not like following rules and stuff like both music have to. So the sometimes it can be carried away by like we get so excited when we chant or something that we forgot what we're doing, but it's always, nowadays we see like this going back to the older days, more traditional music, where you see more choir singing in Byzantine, especially like our style, the style that we're familiar with at St. George. People want to it got going back to actually singing together instead of like just like one turn, one person at a time, chanting. Same thing with Russians, more going back to more authentic compositions where people can. It's like a prayer, more prayerful. It's not just like just merely music, if I can say. So that's what's come. What. Concerning music. In the bottom here, you see on the screen, it says cherubic hymn, and you see this like wiggling, notes and stuff. But then you see in the bottom, you see this letter L, let us. This is basically the first, for the first two words of the cherubic hymn, let us who mystically represent the cherubim. But like what we have, when you're looking at, those are the Byzantine notations, and each one of these notes tell you something to do with your voice. We're all kind of familiar. We've seen Western notation, the staff notation, but and it's very common here because we teach it in our schools and everything. But what you're looking at, this is the notation used in Byzantine style chanting. It's a whole study. I mean, now for somebody to read, especially with this kind of complexity, this kind of music, to read this kind of music, it is a 4 to 5 year program to be efficient, learning all these like tones and notation and melodies and all of these things. But again, I mean, music, it's art. Music, regardless what style it is, same as iconography in the end, it should be a way to get you connected to Christ. Sometimes we get very focused on the music itself or the architecture itself or the icon itself that we forgot what's behind it. And in the end, why we're using this. In the end, the goal is to be united with Christ. The goal is to connect with Christ, to be closer to Christ, for those prayers to kind of like, in a way, stuck in the words of these hymns to stuck in our head. And that's why, we use music. Some people might say, well, why do we need to use music? Why we just not read everything, and it's, yes, we can't read, but when you use music, it helps you remember the words. First, you don't get bored if you have just somebody reading, especially with our Orthodox services, and they might go for 2 hours, or especially imagine Holy Thursday, you're just reading everything. I'm pretty sure people will be asleep halfway through. So you want to do like the music, use music so people can at least listening to music melodies. But also something important with music, in regardless which style, Byzantine or Russian, it helps you memorize the words. It helps you gets the word in your mind more. And actually that's what happened with Arianism. We've talked a little bit about Arios in Arabic, who basically taught the first heresy in the church, which is like Christ was created. Christ was just a special person, or like a special angel, but was not God. In a way to spread his wrong teachings, what he's done, he started writing hymns and setting them up into music. So for people, like, instead of singing whatever songs, secular songs, he starts spreading his own church songs, and it was easy for people to pick up because music helps you. It's just very easy. It's just very common that music helps you memorize the words. So that's what he did. And then the church, kind of like the authentic church, the Christian church, was like, oh, he's doing this, we should start doing this then, because they realize how effective that is. How with the music you can actually bring, teach people the faith, and get these, doctrines in a way embedded in people's mind just through music, by them listening to those songs, and get them to learn these hymns. Any questions about music in general?
No one, Father.
Not a problem. That's good. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the architecture And then with the architecture, you'll see here, like kind of an authentic Orthodox church. Maybe one day we can have a church like that. It's very nice and gorgeous and beautiful. That doesn't mean that our church is not beautiful. It's not in the end about the size, but like some of those churches you walk into, like it's just like you feel like small, you feel humble, you feel like it's just the way with the icons and like the domes and stuff. But that's the beauty of it, that they're all somehow get you to in the end to get you closer to God, or like realize you're somewhere else. You're not just like at your comfort zone in your own room. A lot of times you walk into some churches, I feel like I don't see the difference between this church and I don't know, Chick-fil-A or restaurant down the street. It's just like you don't see the difference, because it's just like they don't have any icons, nothing different. You're walking to like the same setting, almost the same setting, chairs or like, pew here and there, but like, is it a theater? Is it a church? You just don't know better. The traditional Orthodox architecture also expresses the doctrine of the church, particularly in its emphasis on God with us and the complete communion of man and the world with God in Christ. The use of domed ceilings, and we know the domed ceilings. You know what it means? The dome. Basically, when we see a lot of our churches usually have domes, and the reason is the dome is basically it's like represents like as if like this is whole earth, and usually in that, if you look a lot of the churches that have domes, if you always look up and you'll see who's on this dome or what's depicted, usually it's Christ. Christ, well, not usually, I mean, all the time is Christ, and kind of like looking down at you. So it's like when you get there, it's like, okay, he's watching me. He's just, he's watching. And that's the whole point of also the emphasis of God is with us. There's a misconception and misunderstanding that a lot of times, oh, the dome, sometimes I've heard it many times, especially here in our, in our country, we don't use domes because it's an Islamic thing. It's like it reminds us with with the mosque and stuff, and actually it's just they took it from us. Well, we kind of took it from the Jews, and then Islam came and took it from us. So it's not like an Islamic thing. I remember, no, I mean, there's a story about my home parish in Boston. When they built the current church in 1978 or 1979, around that time, Metropolitan Philip came to, God rest his soul, came to consecrate the church. So they built it from, from ground up. It wasn't like they bought some place or anything. So when he came, and they're like, he's like, oh, that's the church. He's like, okay. He's like, where's the dome? And they're like, oh, say no, we don't need a dome. It's like, well, what do you mean you don't need a dome? And he's like, well, they're like, well, it's an Islamic thing. Saying we don't want a dome. He's like, okay, I'm not consecrating the church. Once you put a dome, I'll be back. And that's what happened. And then when you go to St. George in Boston, technically the dome, there's also like all these rules where it should be situated and why. But technically, if you have the iconostasis, the wall, of icons that we have that separates the narthex from the altar, it's so if the dome should start from there, like toward the people, like above the narthex. So above like the solea, what's called the solea, where usually the deacons stand outside, to do the petitions and stuff. That's basically where it should be. But at St. George, Boston, you see this awkward, this dome is like, if this is the iconostasis, the wall of icons, it's like half of it above the altar, half of it above the narthex, just because they had to open the ceiling again, and that was the only place they were able to like fix and put in a dome there. But the whole point of the the importance of the dome is basically to say that it's like heaven above, like looking down at and Christ being in the depicted in this dome is basically looking at us. And then it goes back also back, why the priest puts the hat over their head. We see this also in Jewish, we see this in Islam, that we always put things usually, what is it called in Jewish, the yarmulke. yarmulke, or the Orthodox priest. You'll see we put the almost Catholics, Orthodox. We put also the hat, the kalimavki. It's all as a reminder that there is somebody above us. There is a power. There is somebody above us. Somebody is like we submit ourselves to. But again, the dome ceiling, the dome ceiling is just, it's something like most of Orthodox churches always, make sure they have that. Another thing, the shape and layout of the buildings. Usually you'll see a couple different, when it comes to like authentic, if I can say, architectural Byzantine or Orthodox churches. Either the whole church is like that's like the Ark of Noah, they call it, which literally is just like, it's like a whole cylinder, if I can, it just, the whole thing is just like a whole, it's the Ark of Noah, like if I can say, upside down. Or you'll see the shape of the church as a cross. Or you see the whole church actually as a dome. There's also this tradition, you make the whole church as like round. It's not very common, but authentically or like traditionally, those two styles that you usually see, especially in the Byzantine tradition, either just like this like half cylinder, if I can call it, the whole church is like this, it's like a cathedral kind of style, or the shape of a cross. Literally, if you're looking up at the church, you'll see like just the shape of the cross. And this is something, very common in our churches. Now you tell me in our country here, we've seen all kinds of styles in churches. Like I'll tell you, I was very shocked when I first saw St. George. Like, I mean, I've been a few times before, but like this time, just when I first came in, I would, walk around just to check and stuff. And I was like, it hit me. I was like, wow, that's the first time I ever see this. There is actually a chimney coming out of the, back in the altar. You'll see like this chimney. I was like, I just never thought I would see something like this ever. But it was, and it's not St. George. I mean, believe me, St. George still looks like a trillion time, a gazillion time more beautiful some of the churches that, just because we're in America, these people thought back in especially 40s, 50s, 60s, that we just need to do something different. So there is actually a church in Pennsylvania. I don't want to name the church because some of you might might know it. It's called the Garlic Church. It's like it literally looks like a garlic. What do you call it? Herstum. Like it just literally just. When you look at it, you'd be like, it's just a gigantic garlic thing. And the joke is actually whenever they say, oh, where is Saint so-and-so church? They're like, oh, it's next to the Orthodox church. So, oh, it's the building next to there's an Albanian Orthodox kind of like traditional kind of like, you can't tell from outside that it looks like an Eastern Orthodox church. But our church is like, it's like a spaceship, like a garlic shaped, kind of church. And it's funny when you go up the stairs, you're going up the stairs, and then like the top of the stairs where the surface of the church is. So it's like you feel like, I don't know, it seems like those movies you're watching from like a spaceship or something from the inside, and it's all like awkwardly positioned icons because everything is just like kind of like oh, garlic clove, is that what like it's just like all like awkwardly placed. And you get to a point like, why, some churches that they were built like this, a lot of the Greeks, especially Greeks and Antiochians, for whatever reason, well, it's not for whatever reason, we know in a way, 40s, 50s, 60s, there was this kind of rebellion against anything authentic, as if like somehow anything that was, anything that they were trying to do in these years, those, 30 years span, it's just like, it should not look like anything in like the old country. And because we're in America, we have to do these things. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not what the building gets us to be closer to God, but there are meanings for these. The dome, it has a meaning. Why we have the apse in the churches, there's a meaning for these. Why we have the shapes, everything, the music, and all of this, like they have specific, meanings. So, our church, I mean, it was built from ground up, right? It wasn't like bought or something, but that was the mentality. And the mentality was like, it has to look kind of familiar to what's around us, like what's more American. And that's why it looks more like a Lutheran church or like a Protestant church or something, that it's not like an authentic Byzantine or Russian style church. Again, does that mean like, God forbid, we're doomed, or like, oh, we're not? No, of course not. But it's just not something that it would have been, better in a way, that like to do, this, build it or to arrange it in a way that is more authentic and more common in the Orthodox world, because it will make a difference and people will attract them. There is Sayyidina, His Eminence always tells the story about there's a church, Holy Resurrection Church in Tucson, Arizona. They basically built a church. They started as a mission a few years ago, like 15, 20 years ago, and then they grew. And then they built a church, like a magnificent, beautiful. It fits like probably a couple hundred people in it, but it's just like beautiful, beautifully done. But it's like situated right next to a major highway, where a lot of the people, they just stop by, just they want to know what kind of Christian church that is, because they see the cross and they see something different, something that is not commonly, it's not common to their views and stuff. So they will stop, and that's how some of them converted actually to Orthodoxy, because it was like, that is different. Why is it like this? And then they'll go in and it's like, well, it seems like it's a Christian, some kind of a Christian church, because we see, depictions of, of saints, or depictions of God, a cross, crosses over these domes and all of these things. So there is something to say to have this kind of style in order to bring more people, in order to, open the eyes of other people, like that, this kind of, or the authentic Christian faith. So anyway,
Father,
hey,
there
tell
is
me.
a question from Eleni.
Hey,
So
tell
does
me.
the church have to have a dome to be consecrated?
So nowadays, so with this, what Sayyidina Philip did, he was like, well, you've started it from zero. You'd better have, if you're building the church from nothing, you're building it, might as well put a dome, because that's authentically done. But we see now a lot of places, they don't have domes for many reasons, and one of the main reasons is they bought a church from an Anglican church, or from a Presbyterian, or from a Catholic church, that they don't have a dome. That's fine. At the end of the day, again, those are not like, it has to be. But there are also styles like, I think, I just want to, like, most of the styles, they have a dome. But at the end of the day, it's not the end of the, of the world, or like, well, it's not going to be consecrated unless you have a dome. But usually, anytime you're starting a church from, from ground up, you will, at the end of the day, especially after that incident in Boston, they basically said, okay, any church that's going to be built, when it comes to building the church building, it has to get the approval of the Metropolitan's office, which means like somebody, Metropolitan or something, they have to look at the architectural, maps and all of this. You're like, okay, to approve it, because they don't want like, well, I need the shape, I'm gonna build the church in the shape of I don't know, a space shuttle, or I like it to be like a ladybug or something, because that's how I feel like the church has to be. But no, it's not like nowadays. Yes, if somebody's building from the grounds up, you're definitely gonna probably expected to have a dome. In the Russian style, you don't see this one big dome, or sometimes you'll see this one big dome, but then like small domes, or you'll see in the Russian styles, there are small domes everywhere, instead of just having one main one. It's more just like the way they set up. It's just like maybe on the sides, like small domes or something. But I won't say it has to be unless it's built from ground up, basically.
I have a question, Abu.
Yes, تفضل أستاذ.
So what we're talking about here, what you're telling us, this is not something new. This has been hundreds of. I mean, I would imagine that's our doctrine.
Our what?
Doctrine?
No, well, when it comes to, here's the thing, and that's why, again, when it comes to all of these things that we're talking about today, architecture, iconography, and music, it's I would say small t, but it's not like the big T, as if like doctrines. So that's why, I give you an example, like our church, it's not like, oh, somehow, God forbid, it's not an Orthodox church because it does not have the dome, or the icons might look more Western than Byzantine. So it's, it will be in a way better, or it'll be like more like a better exposure to Orthodoxy, or know more about Orthodoxy like this, or spreading Orthodoxy better like this. But it's not like if our icons are different, so that means somehow, God forbid, we are doing something against the faith. No way.
No, I'm asking because, I mean, this is nothing new, but yet growing up in Lebanon, I don't know how it is in Syria or Jordan, but in Lebanon, most churches just had a flat roof.
Huh?
Sorry?
So here's the so sometimes you'll have to also understand, sometimes for political reasons in some areas, they don't put a flat roof, because for whatever reason they still have to, they cannot show these kind of, they can have a cross, or they're not allowed, they don't want to put the dome, just because they don't somehow make people think that might be a mosque, or but in general, and especially when you're in cities, depending also on the rules of construction rules and all of these, that you might not be allowed to. There is, like I said, there is this tradition or this style of I think it's called the Ark of Noah. It's the whole thing basically. It's just like a
upside down ark. The upside down. That's what our church is.
Yes. So, and sometimes you'll see like another dome, like on the in the beginning of it, or like in the middle of it, and sometimes you don't, just because in a way, like with this, the upside down ark is basically representing as if it's a dome. But like I'll tell you, in my hometown, we have 7 churches, one huge one that fits like 600-700 people, and then the other 6 of them, one fits like a couple hundred, and then the other ones are very small, and one of them, the smallest one, goes to 3rd century, actually 3rd, 4th century. They all have some kind of a dome. So it all depends on like where in Lebanon, where in Syria, like if it's a city, how close it is to Muslim.
I'm talking about like where I'm from, but the church was built, hundreds, a couple of hundred years ago at least, and then there's other churches everywhere. So and all the towns around us. That's what I'm trying to draw from memory. The towns around Hamdoun, all the churches, the Orthodox churches and the Maronite churches, were all flat.
Just like flat?
Yeah, flat.
That's strange. That's strange. And I don't know if it's, well, don't forget, even a couple hundred years, even with if they were built around the time of the Ottoman Empire, so you might not be allowed to do this, or they were basically built like this without putting crosses in the beginning, just so they can not draw the attention.
No, there's a cross and everything. The only dome was over the bell tower. The bell tower had a dome and a big cross over it. But other than that, they were flat roofs. Yeah.
That will be very interesting to check if there's somehow another. But
yeah, maybe
usually. Usually, I mean, even with the tower bell, it's also considered like here's here's the
Oh,
dome, depending
maybe.
on but like just to see like just the flat one, just like this, it's rare. And I would say, I don't know, it's either because of money or something they couldn't afford, or for whatever reason, that just to see just like a flat church. It would be interesting actually to investigate more about this. Why is it that that's how they have it?
I'm from a town, my hometown.
Zabia, you're breaking up a little bit. I think Zabia's talking, right?
Breaking up.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Zabia.
And my hometown, old church that was built off the ground.
Uh-huh.
So they have a flat roof. They have
Interesting.
just like what Walid said. Only the bell has a dome,
Hmm.
and the inside of it, it has like بنقوله بالعربي العقد.
العقد. That's what
Okay. So they played it. Okay. So I mean, at the end of the day, it would be nice to invest, to see actually like different all these styles. But at least the inside, you kind of have this, I don't know what's called actually in English too. Yeah. But like
arch,
at least
like some
an
kind
arch,
of
yeah,
arch.
it's like that basically still have this kind of like it's over your head. Christ is still like, or God is looking into you. But it would be maybe then it's another style that somehow was commonly done. Because I know in my hometown, like I said, seven churches they have different. Our big church, St. George, is like a huge dome. St. Catherine has small. It's actually the whole thing. It's like it's like the upside down of an arc. But St. Michael and St. Simeon, they have just like this small dome on top. St. Mary, the Lady of the Wind, late third century, fourth century, it has a nice dome, like a small dome, and so different styles, I guess. But you don't just see churches like what we have. This is in the States. It's something very common. If it's not like this, it's the whatchamacallit, like the like a garlic loaf, or something like this. Want to say hello?
I want to put this on.
Okay, no, sorry, my love. I'm just. So before sleeping, always there's something that needs to be done before she goes to sleep, because I have to do this, Daddy. Can I do this for you? Because somehow, why would I don't want to sleep now,
It's the light outside. Abuna, I have my own theory about our church, St. George.
Yeah.
When it was built, I think what happened, my guess, is they probably contracted with an architect. Hi, Sonia. They probably contracted with an architect and told him, we want to build a church, a Byzantine church. And they probably went around to look. There weren't many to look. They probably looked around and saw
other ones, the same
churches that.
Yeah. So, but not only this, maybe this is what happened, but also some did it on purpose. So some people like did it on purpose. I don't know. Again, I'm not saying with St. George. Maybe like you said, just they wanted to build a church. They asked an architecture who probably was not aware of anything like Byzantine. There was not like Google that let me Google and see, architecture, Byzantine, and most likely maybe. But also we know we have very well documented. We even have letters at the Archdiocese arguing why do we need to keep, why do we build churches the way we have it in the old country? And that's why they're very like, no, it has to be this kind, and we're in America, which is like, okay. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want you to look at this like, God forbid, God is not going to hear our prayers, or not people, God is not hearing our prayers. God forbid it's not like this. It just, the style, like we say in everything in Byzantine, that it helps us closer. All these things that, help us actually, they have meanings. They have, so when we walk into these things, these places, or when we hear this kind of music, or we see this kind of icons, it's not just like, oh yeah, it's just same thing as like iconography. Jesus is depicted like the same as, I don't know, some kind of another guy, some a painter who painted it, not a random guy. So at least with things that we have as an Orthodox Church, it's somehow a little bit different to make you kind of like think differently, like, you know, why the nose is in a specific shape, or why the mouth in a specific shape in you know, in iconography, and all of these. Do we not take pride of what we have? Of course we take pride of, you know, what's done and stuff. But nowadays we're more like kind of, that's why if with Father Hopko in his notes, he says there's now kind of like going back to the authentic ones. Like, no, we can still spread, you know, it's a good way to spreading orthodoxy, you know, by keeping those or reviving those traditional architectural or iconography, you know, when it comes to iconography or music. So it's not just, you know, just saying. I'll give you an example. When I was at seminary, the Holy Cross Seminary, it's part of what's called the BTI, the Boston Theological Institutes. So, you know, in Boston, Massachusetts, there are different seminaries, all kinds of religions. So you have St. John the Theologian, Catholic Seminary, you have Harvard Divinity School, you have some, you know, Presbyterian, all of this. So once a year, we used to all get together, and it started like, I don't know, like almost 10 years ago, that we would meet once a year, and then each school will present some kind of music, like their own music or hymnography. And I'll tell you, first time we did it, the first year we did it, you know, I was still a student there. I still remember we had a dress rehearsal. And in the dress rehearsal, we're all sitting in this like huge Catholic church in Boston, and every school had like 10-15 minutes to go in there, just get like you know, get situated, get to, you know, see how the sound work, and like, so the people with the sound system, they can adjust and stuff. Everybody, when, you know, was somebody else's turn, with all these like singing music, that it's, you won't feel a difference in a way between what's like, you know, almost rapping, almost like rock music, whatever, because you don't hear the difference. People kind of like, people are rehearsing, like whatever school is rehearsing, and then the other people are like da, 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 talking as if like, you know, no one was interested in a way to hear what the other had, except when we did, you know, when we started chanting. I can tell you that, you know, everybody all of a sudden just like everybody stopped and looked at us as if like, what the heck is this? You know, what is this? It is something different. I mean, we were singing in English. We were doing Byzantine stuff in English, but like, you can tell like the huge difference when other churches were getting, or other churches were trying to rehearse and practice their hymns, and the reaction of the people, you know, around them. A huge difference between how they, you know, these people reacted when those other churches were rehearsing, and then when it came to our turn and we rehearsed using the Byzantine music style that most of them were not even familiar with. And you can see, just like, we thought we were actually in the concert, because if you know, drop a pin, like you would hear the sound of a, you know, pin drop, because everybody was like, whoa, this is different. Why? So it catches people's, you know, mind and, you know, eyes and ears why we're doing what we're doing. So any other questions about the architecture? So what is it, Jameez?
No questions.
Okay, so I want to let me share this. Just a couple things that I, you know, will show you, just like small tips. Where is it? Let's see. We don't need this one. We have. So in our church, oh, can you see? No, you don't see this now. 1 second. This. You see, this is, what is it? This wall of icons, what is it called? Iconostasis. It's a, you know, it's a Greek word, but it's like literally a wall of icons. Iconostasis, just a wall of icons. There are always like very specific things that you will see in 99.9999999% of the churches. Just always, there's always this one awkward church that they want to do something a little bit different, that, but 100% usually of the churches have that. Always when you're looking at the iconostasis, okay, now you tell me the style I'll be very, honest with you. This style of icon, like the wall, like this kind of shape and like the color, even the icons themselves, the way they're depicted, it's a very Western style. Again, it was at that time, whoever they hired, that's what he or she knew, this is what they've done, or this is what they wanted. But what I'm more interested in and tell you that any Orthodox church you go to, always, always on the right, you're gonna see Christ. Do you see my cursor like going around? So always, always you're gonna have Christ here. And then on the other hand, on your left, if you're looking at the altar, you're always going to have the Theotokos, the Virgin Mary. And in general, the Theotokos, you would never see the Virgin Mary in an icon without Christ. It is very, very rare. And if kind of like, it's like, there's something awkward about this to see the Theotokos just with her, without Christ. It's not wrong to have her, without Christ, of course, but it is so commonly to see. It's so common to see her with Christ is just because the unity in a way, how she was able to hold as a human being, to hold God in her hand. It's just a reminder how we all can be like her and hold God in us. So always you're going to have Christ and you're going to have the Theotokos, right, left. And here's another thing. There's also this tradition during weddings. Where does the groom stand? When they're standing here, which side did the groom and his family and his part usually stand? So the groom always stands like on the right of the bride, because the bride, so she's like across from the Theotokos and the groom is across from Christ. It's just that, like those like very small t traditional things to do. The other thing, always next to Christ, and his head is hidden because of the cross we have. It's Saint John the Baptist. So all the churches you're going to go to, you're going to have always Saint John the Baptist to the right, to the left of Christ, always on this side. Okay, and next to the Theotokos, here, this one is usually different from one church to another. Why? Always on the right of the Theotokos, of the Virgin Mary, is the icon of the patron saint of the church. I'll repeat that. Always next to the Theotokos, on her right, the icon of the patron saint of the church. Who is our patron saint? Saint George. So who do we have here? It's Saint George. Let's say if we go to church, Saint Takla, let's say Saint Takla Church.
What if it's St. Mary's?
I'm coming to this. There's an answer for this. There are answers for everything. So if it's Saint Takla, you put Saint Takla here. Okay. To answer Nancy's question, how about if it's a feast of Saint Mary, or it's after Saint Mary's or after Christ? But well, anytime you have a church that is dedicated to the Theotokos, to the Virgin Mary or Christ, it has to be related to a feast, one of their feasts. What do I mean? So there's no random, here's St. Mary's Church. Yes, we might hear it's called St. Mary's, but like, I'll give you an example. St. Mary's in Baltimore, it's not just St. Mary's, it's actually the nativity of St. Mary's. So which icon we depict here instead of St. George? The icon of the nativity of the Theotokos. Let's say another St. Mary in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's called, but it's not just St. Mary's, it's actually the Dormition of St. Mary. So what do we depict here? Which icon? The Dormition. And by looking at it, be like, it's a church. So if I go to a church randomly to a church and I want to know actually the name of the church, it's always the key is to look at the icon next to the Theotokos. And in it, you'll see the depiction and always you'll see the name, or you can tell sometimes from the icon itself that what is it? So for Christ, it's usually if it says, it's Christ the Savior Church. Okay, Christ the Savior Church, but like it has to be like, it's Ascension, or it's Pentecost, or it's Transfiguration, or its resurrection, So it will be related to a specific feast, okay? And then it will, yes.
Roxanne has a question.
تفضل.
Yes. Father, if we move to the doors, the right door, left door, it's a little bit confusing because sometimes we see Archangel Gabriel and sometimes Archangel Michael. So which one should be on the right? Which one should be on the left?
That was my next thing. That was my next thing to talk about. But in general, those four icons that we're looking at, those, always you're going to have Christ here. You're always going to have the Theotokos here. You're always going to have St. John the Baptist here. And always here the patron saint of the church. So if you're walking to a church that you missed the sign, you didn't see the sign, what it says, saint whatever, how do you know? Is by approaching and looking at that icon by telling you what. Now I'm going to share another, it happened that I liked it. He's a buddy of mine, but he was in the middle of it. I was like, fine, I'm not going to Photoshop him out now or something. But so that's Saint, I'll say the name of it. It's Saint Ignatius in Idaho, in Twin Falls, Idaho. That's Father Michael Habib, his name. But see, Christ, Theotokos, St. John the Baptist, and those more like traditional Byzantine icons. And then we have here, and basically the fact that he has this thing, those three crosses and this kind of shape of something, that means he's a bishop. So, if you get closer, you'll see it says St. Ignatius. Okay, so that's when I look and you see the depiction, you get closer, be like, that's St. Ignatius in Twin Falls, Idaho. Okay. So now we have the question, how about what do we have depicted on the other sides now, next to that? Then it's no rules or no specific guidelines. It's not like, there's no specific ones that you have to have. Usually, wherever, depending on how wide the door, the iconostasis is, you might have a small church that you cannot put more than, 4 icons. So you might even have the door, even if it's a small, like the doors here where St. John the Baptist is. But in general, in ones they have wide iconostases, usually right next to those two, you have the what's called the deacon's door, and then it depends, so you'll have Archangel Michael and Gabriel. Which one is on which side, you'll see different styles. There's no specific, he has to be on the north side, or Gabriel has to be on the south side. But then sometimes you'll have even bigger. You go to some Russian churches or some Greek churches that they're huge, or even Ethiopian churches, you might have a wall of 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7 icons. There's no specific ones that you have to put. It's usually you'll put more of traditional ones known in the area. If you're in Greece, let's say you're in Thessaloniki, and I don't know, the church it's for the Dormition of the Theotokos, but Thessaloniki is known for Saint Demetrius being one of their major saints. Well, you're gonna see Saint Demetrius somewhere on either side. So you will put those common or common known saints in the area on top. And also those are the main ones. I see what we're looking here, or what we're looking at our church, but this is basically what we have as main. We have to have, if we have an iconostasis, that's what we're supposed to have. But then when you look at other churches, depending on how high the iconostasis is and how wide it is, you're just going to have all kinds of different stuff. So here, if you notice on top, they put the major icons of the 12 or 13 feasts. And here they had even more space that they can put the 12 apostles on top. Some churches, their iconostasis is not big enough. It stops here. Fine. Some churches, my home parish, there are, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think there are 5 or 6 layers of icons. In Russia, some of the churches we went to in 2019, they have I don't know, 10 rows of all kinds of different icons. So you'll see prophets, you might see ascetics, because they just have a big wall that they have to insert icons in. But most importantly, those four ones, like I said, are the main ones that usually anywhere you go, 99.999%, you're going to have that. Okay. Usually around the dome, I don't want to go that much specifics, but like usually whenever you have a dome, always Christ is in the middle of this dome, and then under him you'll see angels. If it's an painted church, under the angels you might have, or you will see the icons of the prophets in the Old Testament, and then under the prophets you'll see the four evangelists, and then on the ground, on the walls, you'll see all different saints and stuff. Okay, this is like kind of it all depends the size of the church and how much money you can you're spending for to build this. In our church, usually in the back here, we don't see. I mean, we don't have it in our church, and we can't see it in the other picture just because the door is closed. But in here, usually there's an apse. There's an apse in the back, and in here, in this apse, there's always 99.99999% of the churches. In the upper part of the apse, so basically, let's take above where the lights are. Usually, there is an icon of the Virgin Mary, and Christ is in her womb or sitting, kind of in her in her bosom, basically, and it's called the one her lap, yeah, the more spacious than heaven. It's called the icon of the Theotokos, who are more spacious than the heaven. And then under it, like here on the wall, like basically where we have, like where I'm putting my cursor, is basically you'll see Christ, an icon of Christ, giving communion to the 12 disciples. And then usually next to them, if it's a big altar, you might see the church fathers like St. John Chrysostom, St. Athanasius, St. Gregory, all those who wrote basically in depth or in details about the doctrines of the church. That's basically like in general, those, again, this is all in general. We can, at some point we can do like way more specific things about like explicitly all these parts and like what changes and stuff. But in general, that's at least when it comes to iconography and architecture, that's what we see in traditional churches. See here where, I mean, it's not showing because it's it's actually, what do you call it, like a neon, a light. So, but usually here you'll see, like you'll see the icon of the mystical supper. Why? Because, well, that's the altar table. This is where we're preparing, and we prepare the communion and stuff. That's what we have. And usually at the doors, now we in this picture we have the doors open. Usually you'll have this traditional with a small t. Again, all of these that I'm talking about, they're in a way small t. It's nice. They actually have such an impact when we understand why they're there and be like, oh wow, that's actually genius that's how they thought about it. But of course, this is a door, it's a gate, right? And then when we hear the word gate, it is so used in Annunciation Feast. The Feast of Annunciation and the hymnography, there's always this word of like, oh, the gate, the Theotokos being the gate that opened up, for us, opened heaven to us and opened earth to heaven. So usually at the doors, you'll see in the middle of, the icon of the Annunciation. And then on the side, we have the four evangelists, because they wrote the Gospels, they proclaimed it, they opened the door for us, they opened the gate to know who Christ is. In our church, we have basically the four evangelists depicted, and actually we have this the icon of Annunciation is right here next to St. George, basically, if you remember correctly. Any questions about any of these? Iconography, or you might say, why do we have those? Why the church is messy? We did something very new for a lot of you this year. we threw what's called bay leaves on Holy Saturday. Bay leaves are a sign of victory, and like in what we like what we do in weddings. What do we do in weddings in the old country? Whenever the bride and the groom leaves the church, or they're walking by, or going to the church, or from the church to the, especially if they're not driving to, they're celebrating, I don't know, down the street in somebody's house or something. What do we throw on them? Rocks.
5 كيلو رز وورد.
Exactly, 5 kilos of, like 13, 14 pounds of flowers and rice and all of this. So
4.5 Zabia doesn't work.
I'm sorry.
4.5 kilos won't work.
No,
not 5 kilos. 5 kilos.
I'm just kidding. Exactly.
But it's exactly just like you get all the. But it's a sign of what? A sign of
يعني خير
exactly,
ومحبة.
happiness and victory, and that's what they've done. Even through centuries, they would either throw rose petals or anything. So that's a sign on Holy Saturday morning when we do the liturgy, the Divine Liturgy of Holy Saturday, and we say right after the epistle, we sing a very major hymn. It's called "Arise, O God, and Judge the Earth." Kum ya Allah wahkum fil ard, for thou dost inherit all the people, or all the nations, or depending on whatever translation you're using. So in it, while the priest and the chanters chanting this, you're going around and you're just like throwing those rose petals or like bay leaves. And we were lucky this year. They were not fresh. It's fine, but I wanted to. It's very hard to get bay leaves, and honestly, not only hard, it's very expensive. I looked into getting fresh ones, but they sell them by bunches, and each bunch is $10. It's $10. And the bunch, when you're just like, literally just you go like this, it's like $10. Imagine if I do it 20 times, it's $200. So like, okay, maybe some churches actually have a budget for it. Honestly, it's something like we have to have the bay leaves. So it's like the same way they raise money for whatever, Na'ish, for it's like, okay, we're gonna make sure. But we were, Stephanos, our chanter, God bless him, when I was like, yeah, I'm looking for bay leaves, it just seems like very expensive, and do I really want to get $300-$400 spend like just like this on the bay leaves and to get them. But he was like, oh, you know what, hold on, my neighbor has actually a bay leaf tree. And I'm like, he's like, let me ask him. But the problem is he trimmed the tree in the summer, or he so he saved some in bags or whatever, because a lot of time, it's used, bay leaves is used to cook with, and it kills bad smell. So if you're doing, I don't know, you're doing something that it might, what do you call it? Ghanem, I'm not ghanme. Mansa, but also, what do you call it? Ghamme. How do you translate ghamme in English? Ghamme is like literally
the instance of
There's a name, and Italians do actually, they make it.
Tribes.
Tribe, yeah.
Imagine, imagine you're stuffing the intestines of lambs and stuff, like with meat or whatever, in rice. So there's a big
good stuff.
No, Eleni, I'm sorry. That's the only one there. I don't even get it.
It is good. It is good.
I love it.
No, I don't know. You love it. You can eat it.
Exactly. Mom and Dad used to make it, and I walked out of the house.
But the thing is, like, people to kill because you're literally boiling, intestines that, what's in intestines, So it just takes time to clean it and all of this. So they put bay leaves in it, so it kills the smell. So I guess he saved them. This guy, Stephanos is a neighbor. He saved them for whatever cooking and stuff. So we were able to get 2 big bags. They were not green. Next year, God willing, hopefully his tree, hopefully has more green bay leaves, and then we can use them. And usually you don't clean them. Usually you leave them on the floor till Ascension. Literally 40 days after Pascha. I had actually a funeral on Bright Monday, so I was like, maybe I should tell people while we're waiting on some people, while people are coming in. I was like, maybe I should say something about those bay leaves, or why do we have these things on the floor so people don't say like what a dirty church, or what I mean, like why do they have all these like somehow Bailey, some like whatever leaves on the floor, like why they don't take care of it. I was like, maybe I should say something about this. So I had to explain it. Just FYI, we clean, we clean very well, but this is a sign of victory. This is like somebody's, after somebody's celebration, you want to still see it and enjoy it. But we did actually clean everything on Wednesday or Thursday.
And we cleaned just before that day, by the way. We had just cleaned before we walked.
Yes. But you see, that's the thing. I don't want people to consider this as like something that I should have used the word clean. I should have said we took them out, like we just moved them different, because it's not a cleaning. I know somebody came up to me after Holy Saturday, after the liturgy, is like, is it time to clean them now? I was like, nobody touches them. Nobody, like, this is, how can you celebrate Pascha, the Easter liturgy, and you don't have those bay leaves? Like, we have to have them. We have to see the green. I wish they were greener, but it's fine.
I just looked it up. I just looked it up on WikiLeaks, and the Greeks used to wear it as crowns. We see them in pictures.
Yes, it's a sign of victory.
I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, sure. And again, it's a sign of victory that this is their crowns. That's how they're, when we look at, of course, Greeks and Roman, the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, this is a sign of victory, sign of kingship. That's why the hymn says, "Arise, O God, and judge the earth." In Arabic, we say "wahkum," not only judge, but like and rule the earth. So as a ruler, this is the sign of your, being a ruler. Again, all of these are like, I don't want people to think this is like rituals, or like something like we have to do them and this is it. No, it's just, those are like to help us look beyond this, to help us understand what's going on, and things like this. But that's basically that's what I had for you today. At least that's what I wanted, and I know. But we can open up for questions, or we can, because next week, God willing, I am going to start with the creed. If you're not familiar with the creed, please let me know. I can send you the text for the creed. But it's the creed. It's the constitution of the Orthodox Church. Basically, we're going to look into it, like where it came from, part and part. What do we mean by this? Light of light, very God, very God. What does that mean? At least in general. But it will be important for people to be familiar with. Either make sure you have your Bible, or not Bible, you're not going to find it in the Bible, but like your Divine Liturgy book, if you have, or if you don't have it, I'm more than happy to send you a text, in Arabic or in English, for you to be familiar with the text. I think in the book, I don't know actually if it's in the book, if it writes it says the whole thing. Let me see, Nicene Creed. Yes, actually it does have it, but I do want to, it looks at, what they have in the book is the original text, because we'll see when it was written, why it was written, why do we have it, but also I want you to be familiar with the one that we recite at least every liturgy. And now it's actually not only liturgies, it's in other services, but mainly we're familiar with it with the Divine Liturgy. And actually on that topic, I don't know if you're familiar with Khuriyi Gigi Baba. Khuriyi Gigi Baba, she is the wife of Father James Shadid in Houston, Texas, St. George, Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
She's a very talented musician who's written, and I think it's a whole beautiful ministry on its own, what she does. She writes all these like beautiful songs about Christianity and so for kids, it's one of the best tools. We have, Sonia, our 40-year-old, is just like, she's in love with her CDs, to the point like the first time we FaceTimed each other, and I was like, because I wanted her to meet, and Sonia was like, like that's Gigi that you listen to 24/7, like in the car. Can you put Gigi, Daddy? Can you have Gigi on? I want to listen to Gigi. But like, you'll get to learn a lot about the faith through these songs, basically. So she has a song actually where she about the creed, and she sings it with a like, I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth and of all things visible and invisible. And then what kind of music you're listening to, like in background, like basically marching, like during the not the Civil War, the Revolution War. Because why? It's the Constitution. You know what I mean? Like we fought. I love how that she like put those two together. It's like our revolution is against to have our own, our own country, our own belief. So it's like the music when you play, you'll see it's just like very like people marching through the war or something. Yeah, her name is Eleni Gigi Baba. Gigi Baba Shadid or Gigi.
My first cousin, I have to throw that in there, you know.
She is your first cousin?
My first cousin, Abu
I don't know if
Hakhali,
you-
Akhu Ummi.
Really?
Yeah.
What a difference. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm
Father Camille, sorry, Father should be some
Anthony. Father
Anthony, sorry, Father Anthony. But then you send me Camille. Ibn Khali Samayan also.
Well, yeah, she's he's her brother. Usually,
And she also has great YouTube ones out there too.
Yes. She did last year because of the pandemic. She did a lot of.
They were great.
She's actually Shadid with an I instead of double E.
Correct.
SHADID. Gigi Shadid. I mean, it's beautiful. But anyway, the reason I'm saying because maybe I should play that. Maybe I should play the her song about the.
Sure.
At least the creed. But it's just we will talk about it. The creed and why. But I do want people to. I'll tell you this: it's very sometimes heartbreaking. In the baptismal service, the sponsors, the Arab and Arabi, or the Shbin or the Shbini, how some in our cultures we might have different names, but the sponsors, they have to recite the creed. And I cannot tell you how sometimes it's a heartbreaking thing when, I mean, of course, the godparents should be Orthodox, or at least one of them should be Orthodox, and you give them, the text. I mean, okay, maybe they didn't memorize it, but then you give them, you'll be like, okay, which one you would like, Arabic or English or whatever language, and you can tell they're just reading it as if like, I just have no idea whatsoever what that is, to the point. One time a friend of mine was telling me, like, he was so upset, the priest, like, I mean, it's okay. Like, who is Pontius Pilate? Like, couldn't they know it's Pontius Pilate? I mean, like, they never heard of Pontius Pilate, at least, even with Pontius Pilate, they don't know how to say his name. I mean, like, how do you and they tell you, I want to be the sponsor, and this, the person is the sponsor, he's the Arab, he's the Shbin, he's the one who should spiritually taking care of that person,
It's just, all they have to remember is Pontius, because Pilates is the sport. They go do it every day, right? So you break it down for them like that. Pontius, that's a gym. Pontius, and then Pilates.
But it's
أبونا
Go ahead, Zabia.
أبونا قديش هلا بالوقت الحالي أو like how much nowadays the churches is spending like over I don't know, sometimes it's over the budget, over what you can imagine, on some accessories that it's really, I see it unnecessary.
This is a great question, Zabia. I really, I think that's where, in Arabic we say, spend as much as you can afford, or spend according to your means. Some stuff we should, in the end, we have, like in the church, we have to have a cross to bless with. Okay. Do I really need to buy a cross that it's $5,000? maybe if the church budget is so, big and they have the money and they've been taking care of everybody in it, or like a lot of people in the church, and they can still afford a $5,000 cross, fine. But if if I have a problem in the budget or, in the church expenses that, I can afford something like this, but I need to get something that it's overwhelming, like big and expensive, that's wrong. It shouldn't be on the expense of like, no, I'd rather put that money and help people who are in need for it, or not like overburden the church with an expense that we can actually get away with, a couple $100 cross instead of 500. You know what I mean? In World War I forgot the name of that bishop. One of our bishops in Syria. Actually, no, I think it's Patriarch Macarius. I think it was either the famine 1928 or the World War I, whatever. Anyway, the point is, whoever was the patriarch at that point literally sold a church item for the people so he can get money, so he can buy rice and wheat.
Epiphanius?
I don't know if I think his name is Macarius, and that's why they called him Zaim.
Macarius is in Cyprus.
Yeah, I can't remember the name, but
Epiphanius.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't, but because I need to look it up. But like what I remember is the
I have heard the story.
Yeah, the story itself, that he was like, I don't care about church items anyway. At the end of the day, why would I? They were like fancy, expensive ones that at some point they were donated or bought, or the church was had them, and he sold them just because he wants to feed his people. So there are things that we can, if we can afford it, fine. If we cannot afford it, no. I mean, I've done things at the church that I'm believe me, I have things that I do want to get, but like one, the simple reason I'm not. And I know if I say to the people like, we need this, I'm sure people will say, here's 10 times this, but still I have to think twice about it, what is really, really essential. And even if it's really essential, how much money do I want to spend on it? And I have to count to 100 before I make that decision, because I don't want to just like we have good things and beautiful things, and then my people are like starving, or or the church itself is like struggling or something. So we have to be, we need to take care of the church. That doesn't mean we don't want to, sometimes the beauty comes with simplicity, and you can still, we as Arabs usually, it has to be bulky and big and everything, or else it's not good. Sometimes like
the chandelier, it has to be crystal, and
and it's like it has to be like I don't know, 500 pounds, that it has to, like, no,
or at least it has to look like it's crystal and all gilt and everything else.
So
but in my opinion, like sending some Christian kids to afford some universities or to feed some poor families, it's way meaningful.
Exactly. But again, Zabia, we need to take care, in the end, as a church, it has to look good. It's a reflection. The church is a reflection, how much we like to take care of the house of God. Does it mean that, I don't want you to feed yourself in order to give everything to the church? No, of course not. But like the same way you take care of your house, and you want your house to look nice and neat and beautiful, and people come to it, that it's not like messy, it's not like dirty, it's none of this. Well, I hope and pray that we deal with the same thing with the church according to our needs.
I agree. It's like the
خير
الأمور أوسطها يعني.
Exactly. And it is important. I'd rather spend the money feeding people, who are actually in need, than just like to have a church. What's good about it? I can show you a lot of churches that they look magnificent, but they're dead. You look at the icons, it's like, it's a $2 million icon, iconography project. You look at the tabernacle, the thing that goes on the table in the church, like see this thing in the middle right here? And some people we're getting one that it's $10,000. Like, okay, you want to get one $10,000, then you'd better have a vibrant church, that you're taking care of everybody in your church, that you're making, a lot of outreach to communities. And then, okay, you want to spend, Yes, but do I really want to get one that is broken? And I'll tell you this, sometimes I have people like, oh, I have this thing that's broken that I don't use anymore. How about you take it? Like, no, if you're not using it, why do you want the church to use it? You know, if you think it's not like, enough for you, why would it be for the church? I understand when some said, like, I bought this for the church. Beautiful, beautiful. And actually it's a good problem. A lot of times it's like, but I bought this brand new and everything and beautiful. Yeah, but I have now 20,000 of this. We don't need this. But it gets me if like, well, I want to get rid of this. I don't have, this is broken now. I don't use. How about the church takes it? Like, no, I'm sorry. That's no.
Thanks.
But anyway, what else? Just again, I'm wearing my hoodie for the teens, just making sure that's, God bless them. It's beautiful design. It's in the back. It has Christ is risen, Messiah qam, Christos anesti. It's beautiful. If you didn't get yours, at some point we will do the.
I got one.
If it came in purple or some other color, I might.
Well,
Rima was supposed to come for Pascha colors.
Yeah, I know. Purple is Pascha color.
no, it's not.
Well, sort of.
So,
Okay,
well, then it's all right
it
then.
can't be.
White.
Abuna magazine worthy. Magazine worthy.
It depends on what the light is, Rima. Depends on what light you use.
Yeah.
It could be
white's
white.
just not good for me. It washes me out.
Habibti.
I just had to throw that in there, Abuna. Sorry.
Sure, we can make a special, order for you.
I kept looking for the part where you can select color. I knew it was white for a reason, but still, come on.
Nope, we dictate here.
It will be very weird to see the word Christ is risen and there's purple background. Just to tell you this.
Y'all just don't like that color.
How about red?
I'm gonna go
Maybe-
get you one. I'm gonna get you a purple one.
Purple's Lent, Rima.
Excuse me?
Purple is for Lent.
Okay, well, that's part of
Yeah.
Pascha.
Okay, خلصنا Lent وهلا Pascha. Anyway.
Anyway, it does not. I mean, in the end, if purple. Again, we look at these things as a small t, fine. As not like small t as a small traditional thing. It's not.
أبونا بدي أقول شغلة مشان الشانتينج.
Yes.
First of all, I want to comment about your beautiful voice. We finally had somebody who chanted beautifully.
Glory God.
Thanks God. But also, how important for the priest to have a good voice. I mean, were before selected if they have a bad voice or not good in chanting, or how was it?
Yeah. So it's never been, and I'll tell you this. Well, maybe years and years ago. Somebody has a beautiful voice. Let's make him a priest. But the problem, you get a good voice, but you get very bad theology because I just never went to seminary, or it just, some of them, we have priests, from a couple 100 years ago and 100 years ago didn't even write their own name. They couldn't even write their own name. So just because it's beautiful, they have a beautiful voice and they know a few hymns and they memorize the liturgy, let's make them priests. The point what I'm saying is, it's never now like in official education, for the priest, it is never a requirement. Or you have to have a voice, or like if your voice is not beautiful, you cannot apply to seminary, or you cannot be ordained. We look at the voice as a plus. Somebody beautiful voice, it's just a plus. Yes, it is important sometimes people who don't have a beautiful voice, or they don't know anything about the chant, it might tick people off or like it's it doesn't get the people, they won't get the people engaged and stuff. But I hope people see beyond this. Yes, when somebody has a beautiful voice or knows what he's doing, it is definitely like a good part. It's a push, but it's not the main thing. But what we do in seminary, you're still required, even if you're not musically inclined. We still have to teach them, and I had to learn it. But that's what I teach now. We had to teach, the basic stuff, that there are hymns that they're required from a priest to know, and they get tested on this, and they can fail a class, or they can, they have to do better, or they excel in it. But we don't throw on them, oh, you need to learn how to read this music piece that it's 5-page long, very complicated. That's not their job. Their job is to, there are hymns, even if they're not musically inclined, to read music, they can still, listen and learn, like they learn songs, like secular songs. God, thank God, chanting, I'm a chanter, since I'm the age of 9. I studied it professionally, I teach it and stuff like this. It just happened, good night, Deacon. Good night, Deacon. God bless you. It happened that, that I'm good at it. But there are, through the last 8-9 years that I've been teaching, not everybody has that, but they have a musical ear. Usually, in general, people have a musical ear. People think they might be tone deaf, or it's very rare to have somebody tone deaf. It's just a matter of practicing and stuff. And whenever you start learning these hymns, if they're, the hymns that you usually have in the church, and they're written very well, it's just by memorizing them, it will help you, it sounds nice. Yes, the beautiful voice will be a plus. Knowing music very well, it's also a plus, but it's not if you don't know music, or if you fail in your music class, that means you're not going to be a priest. It definitely helps, again, but also I hope people look beyond this. Although sometimes it's very hard when you have a priest who are or a deacon or something, who are just way off, or no voice whatsoever or something. And we've had that, but some of these people, I know few, they're better priests than way more priests that they have just a beautiful voice. You know what I mean? And they preach beautifully, they serve, diligently, and they serve from their heart. So it's a tricky thing, but I would say priests need to have a basic knowledge of music and hymnography, but it's not a requirement to have, let's say, as an example, I'm just, it's a blessing that I know this, but it's not that's the rule that has to be, everywhere and for all priests. Maybe, yes, W? No, good. No. Good.
Thank you. That's good.
But it is.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you mentioned how we were called Byzantines, I happened to have a neighbor who came into my house one day, and she saw my icons, and she said, "Oh, I'm Byzantine too." And I kind of looked at her, and I was like, "You're what?" I'm like, "You mean Orthodox?" And she's like, "No, I'm Byzantine." And I had never heard that term before to describe your faith as Byzantine.
I'm very interested to see what she means by that.
Yeah, I kept asking, "You mean Orthodox?" Uh-huh. She's like, "No, Byzantine." I'm like, "What is that?"
Exactly. It would be nice.
Well, I guess I gotta knock on her door and ask her, what exactly did you mean?
Yeah, a lot of, we have around 30,000 sect in Christian religion. Wasim says maybe Byzantine Catholic. Maybe, if that's what she means. Melkite, basically, that's another word for it, Melkite. Okay. Maybe, but most likely she doesn't know much about her faith, just to call herself Byzantine. It's weird just to somebody to call himself or herself Byzantine. It's like, you lived in the Byzantine era from 330 AD to 1452.
Right.
It's somehow you showed up 600 years later. I'm a Byzantine.
I don't know what that means if you're going to go around saying that.
What is it?
And I even looked it up. I Googled it, of course, and I'm like, what is? And I did see Byzantine Catholic. But I had never, I was like, am I the only one that's heard this? I know what Byzantine is, and what Byzantium is, and what all of that is, but
So most likely, yeah, most likely she's Byzantine Catholic, like Wasim said, but probably she's not practiced or anything. She's like a lot of our people, you know. Well, we have people like, "Oh, I'm Orthodox." What does that mean? Oh, I'm Orthodox, you know. And, and by the way,
like you.
Yeah, yeah. Just by the way, I'm sorry, I should have said that before. Tonight we have somebody who's new, and Wasim Kahush. Wasim is interested in Orthodoxy, and he came with his brother Samia this past Sunday to church. We welcome you, Wasim. Welcome.
Welcome.
Anytime you want to come.
Welcome, Wasim.
Those are basically the people that you're looking at. Wasim are the core of our church. Those are what's holding the fort, if I can say. We still have some that they're not on this call, but what you see is majorly those ones who are holding the fort, and those are the beautiful people that I've met since I came to St. George a few months ago, and I felt home from second one, in my family. So Wasim, anytime, the door is open. Ahla wa sahla, as we say.
Abuna,
Yes.
does that mean I have to behave because we're going to have a surprise guest visitor every time?
So, some people will be getting, yes, you'd better behave. Wasim, anything that you see from Rima, please don't take it upon, everybody that you're, we have a special case with her. God bless her. What are we going to do?
Look how red I am now. I don't get red normally.
Yeah, but that's welcome, Wasim. But yeah, with Byzantine, it's maybe she's referring as Byzantine Catholic or, some kind of, but again, I was saying there are around 30,000, I think, groups in the United States that claim themselves some kind of a Christian religion, like 30,000. And they have all these weird names, like all kinds of like the church. Actually, I've seen one that it's the Old Antioch. It's like, let's look in the gospel, in the Bible, some legit name, and then let's call it this way. It's like Antioch. Do you know even where Antioch is, or have you heard of the Patriarchate of Antioch? And we're like, with no idea. It's like, I'm just gonna name my church this. So you'll have some. I won't be surprised if somebody just like had a church that started a church. And by the way, to start a church in the States, it's very easy. One of the very easy. John Oliver, I don't know if you've heard of this man. He's a late night, I think, like comedian. He did actually a whole episode on churches and how easy to do it. Google, YouTube it or something. He tells you how like all you have to do is like to prove you have a space to fit 50 people, I think, and then pay whatever fee, which is like a very. And then you get a status of like nonprofit, and then here you go. And to prove it, he actually did it for the show. He opened his own perpetual something church, and he was telling you how like, yeah, just it's easy, And it's like, it's funny how you get your legitimacy as a church from the IRS, like by applying, just the fact that you met the guidelines of the IRS, you're a church now. And then you can.
Father.
Yes, ma'am.
I have very weird question. I heard from a client of mine. He's an American, and he turned to be a Mormon. And I heard there is a Mormon church in Jordan.
I won't be surprised.
And I was like, to what the church belongs, and who's the management of it? Like, who does it belong to?
So I'm not surprised. It's been since the 1800s. We have been when I say we, like in the old country, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Iraq, Kuwait, anywhere that is like, there are Christians. There were missions from Catholics and definitely Protestants and all kinds of churches, like non-denominational, that they pretend to go to the old country to preach for Islam, Muslims to convert, but they're actually converting Christians.
Yeah.
And they do that even nowadays. They even go to Russia. They go to European countries in Greece. And they set up these like different churches. So you have the Mormons, you have the Protestants, you have all kinds of stuff. And the way they get you is by like, oh, we'll pay your rent for the year. Oh, what do you need? You need a car? We'll buy you a car. And they have all these, like, especially a lot of them actually originates from the state. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Grahams, the Billy Graham and the Graham Foundation. So like, I've had 2 years ago, they did a huge gathering of, for the Christians, basically in the Middle East, like some kind of in DC. And I got to go with His Eminence. The Greeks were there, the Russians, everybody. And I was so mad at this because they're telling us like basically like, oh, I get to talk to some people there, and I realized, well, the Graham's Foundation is actually located in a town called Boone, North Carolina. Boone, North Carolina is like this place that it's a corner in DC. But it happened that I know Boone very well because we have a church, St. Peter and Paul, in Boone. And in that church, actually, my Alexis, my Khouria, and I, we have a goddaughter who lives there. Her mother is Alexis's, best friend from college, and we became the godparents. The point is, and like when I'm talking to some people about it, and like, yeah, we go there and we help build churches and build schools and help people, but that's their, they pretend to be there to convert Muslims because, oh, an Arab Christian cannot convert a Muslim because then his head will be, on the, he'll be, he'll lose his head, or she'll lose his head if he or she preaches to his, his or her Muslim neighbor. So, oh, we will do this for you because they're not going to kill an American, or they're not going to kill, But in the end, it's a hidden task to convert Christians by offering them money usually. And that's why even in Lebanon, going to Lebanon in 2017, after 10 years almost being there, I was shocked when I went to like bigger cities, and usually I'm like on a lot of corners, the Baptist, Arabic church, the whatever, Protestant church, the evangelical, this, I'm like, what? Like in our country? Like in our own Orthodox people, but that's how they get people. Oh, look, the church is not giving you money. We will give you money and stuff. So Zabia, to have Mormons, I'm not surprised. In Jordan, in Egypt, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Palestine, they just go around. They have budget. They have money dedicated for these things, where they go and say, Zabia, what are you struggling with? Oh, we you need money for your children's education. Or we're going to open a church. It will be free for you. We're going to open it, not charge anything like what the Catholic Church charges, or the Syriac, or the Orthodox, and just come to our meeting. It's all Christ, all Jesus. What's the difference? That's how they get you. And unfortunately, we have a lot growing these past years. I won't be surprised to see the Mormons or any kind of groups that claim that they're Christian. Anyway, it was not a weird. I thought it was like, okay, what kind of weird question that is? It's actually a sad question. It's just sad that that's what we have in our culture and in our countries. And don't worry, there's no weird questions. So you can ask. Well, every time I thought like, I've heard all kinds of crazy things, but we've heard many crazy things. So I'm usually not shocked anymore when I hear stuff like this.
Well, I can bring it a little bit closer home if you want to hear my little story.
Sure, Majida, sure.
Many years ago, we went the Mormon.
Bye, Lenny. Good night.
The Mormon temple is here in Silver Spring, and they always put a very nice nativity scene Christmas time. And Mom and I went there, and they said, "Oh, what language?" We said Arabic, and they said, "Oh, well, we have the Bible in Arabic." And we're like, "Okay, fine. You want to give it to us?" No, we'll bring it to you. So you took your name and address and everything. And it was like, we realized so many calls, so many visits. They're trying to convert us, and I was like, "Oh, it's like that's not what I wanted. I'm not gonna convert. I just wanted the Bible. If you have it, Mom was interested in it because, we wanted to see how their Bible,
yeah,
Orthodox Bible.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I'm not interested in it. That was the end of that, harassment, I want to say.
Yeah.
But that's what they do. And they believe, all these groups, they believe that we're not Orthodox. I mean, that we're not Christians. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, oh no, no, your Christianity is disturbed, and somehow
If you're Arab, they think you're Muslim, period.
Sure.
That's a big problem because I've had friends.
Sure.
When I used to work for in a dental office, I had patients come in during some issues with Arabs or whatever, and they'd say, you know what, they need to drop a bomb on all those damn Muslims, and I'd say, wait a minute, I'm Arab and I'm Christian. I said, they're not all Muslim, so why do you think that? And you could just see them like, what?
Exactly.
But that is how they think. They think everybody's Muslim if they're Arab.
Yeah, and the worst part is like when they go to the old country to convert you and they see like churches. I mean, don't you see these churches with crosses? Like what, a Muslim somehow opened a church? Like, but like for them, they see it as if like somehow we as authentic Christians, if I can say, disturb the faith somehow. And,
right.
1,500 years later or 1,800 years later or 1,900 years later, somehow those new Christian group now, let's tell you who Christ is. Because, we read a couple books, and I got this revelation that, and especially you see that, and unfortunately in our culture here in the States, just because we think we have the power, so we know everything. Oh, no, we're number one country in the world. We can tell you about what Christian is, because we know this. I see sometimes a picture on Facebook that says, it shows like every religion, like when they started, except Orthodoxy, it says like from day one, like, Jehovah's Witnesses, 18 something,
right.
Mormons, 17 something, Lutheran, 16 something or 15 something, So it's like,
And then there's Orthodoxy in the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like Rose, I think wrote like Christianity didn't start in Kentucky,
Right.
But a lot, I think I've told you, I don't know if I told you about this, but this Jehovah's Witness that saw the Greek priest at the pharmacy where I used to work, and she's like telling her, he's like, wow, I read the gospel and it's authentic, original language, Greek. And she looked at him, she's like, Greek, it's King James Version, like 50 in English. For her, that the gospel is written 1,500 years after Christ in English. I mean, nothing against English, but like, get your facts before you say, the original language of the gospel is English with King James Version. Like, how can you argue with this kind of ignorance?
And which King James Version?
Right.
Exactly. Like, seriously? But it's sad. But like Zabia, like you said, it is way more sad when they go like to your own place, you know what I mean? Like we've had churches like from, the grave of Christ, the resurrection of the church. Like, I mean, this is where he walked and stuff, and they're going to tell us, but it's unfortunate. Sometimes it's our fault too, as a church. We're not doing even a good job keeping our own people, helping our own people. Even not only on the church level, even on the parishioners level, we take things for granted. So we're like, we're Orthodox. What does it mean that? What does it mean? What are you doing to invest in this Orthodoxy or this Christianity? Are you teaching? If somebody tells you Christ is not God, what can you tell them? Like these basic things. If you say, I'm American, why am I American? Because we believe in the Constitution. We have this. At least somehow you can define it's the land of the free. It's the land of opportunity. So at least you can explain things and why I'm American or why I'm proud to be American. Well, do the same with your religion. Not just I'm Orthodox, and then we can help with other things and stuff. But anyway.
Abuna.
Yes.
I need to leave in a minute, but while we
Yes.
were talking about Orthodoxy, I remembered I have this, and I don't know if I found it, if Nicolette gave it to me, or where it came from, but it's called What is an Elevator Speech? And most of you are probably, if not all of you, familiar with an elevator speech.
I'm not.
Okay, can I read it to you? It's short.
You sure? Okay.
Okay. It's a very brief way of sharing with someone who asks about our faith. Here's an example. Orthodox Christianity is an authentic and original Christian faith founded by Jesus Christ. As an Orthodox faith founded by, as an Orthodox Christian, you can experience heaven on earth through the divine liturgy, which is mystical, spiritual, and beautiful with its incense, icons, and sacred music. You can transcend time and space while you meditate upon the words and teachings of Jesus Christ. It's the most pure form of Christianity. Nothing artificial added. It's the real deal.
Sounds good to me.
That's an elevator speech, if I ever heard one for Orthodox anyway.
Salim had his, but it's a good, good to Salim, you had something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say good night.
Oh yeah, me too.
Anyway,
actually.
I think we should all say good night.
I have to go say good night.